Thank you for clicking on today's video. We had another huge rumor drop about Odell Beckham Jr., the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Tom Brady. Before we hop into the content for today's video, if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and like the video if you guys do enjoy it. With all that being said, let's hop into today's video. It was about 12 o'clock this afternoon when Bleacher Report published an article quoting Adam Schefter saying that Tom Brady might want to snag Odell Beckham Jr. And of course, much like any, crazy news, this spread like wildfire and it started going all over the place and multiple news sources picked up on it. The thing most of those networks failed to pick up on was this was kind of a rumor and he might want Odell Beckham Jr., not a guarantee that the Bucs were going to, make a large trade offer for Odell Beckham Jr. And that was kind of a misconception that was going around. A lot of people, had it reported that they were guaranteed going to trade for Odell Beckham or at least give an offer, and that's not the case. Tom Brady has a long history with Odell Beckham Jr. back when he played for the Giants. The Patriots actually tried to trade for Odell, and that was quoted in the article, stated that, a lot of fans have wanted to see Tom Brady and Odell team up for a while now, and, maybe this is the time where they can do that with Odell coming off an ACL injury. Maybe they can get him for the right price, because at the Patriots, they tried to trade for Odell when he was, at the peak of his career, peak of his prime, and the Giants, said, no way, we're not going to trade him. But Tom Brady and Odell have always, had mutual respect for each other, and they've always, really wanted to play for each other. Odell's called Brady the GOAT multiple times. Brady's publicly came out and said how good of a receiver Odell Beckham Jr. is, and that's just kind of created a, marriage in the media that, these two guys, they're going to end up playing together, and I think that's kind of what got this narrative pushed out and force-fed to a lot of people. A few days ago, Browns GM Andrew Berry, he called Odell Beckham Jr. a dynamic player, and he's very excited to have him back for next season. So that kind of goes another thing against the rumors, but, you can't believe every single thing that you hear from a team or a GM. We heard from the Giants after they extended Odell that they're not going to trade him. They ended up trading him. So maybe that the same thing applies here. But usually when a GM says something like that and a dude's coming off of an injury, he's honestly not looking to trade him unless there's a trade that the GM cannot refuse, and then, it's a different story when it comes to that. But over the past few days, Tom Brady and the Bucs have been working on a contract extension and the ability to create more cap space with this contract to bring in people like Odell Beckham Jr. We all know that the Bucs have a lot of players hitting the market this free agency, Levante David, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, to name a few. So he's doing the best he can to allow the Bucs to re-sign some of those guys and maybe even potentially make a trade for, let's say, Odell Beckham. Tom Brady has made hundreds of millions of dollars and his wife has made even more. He does not need the money at this point in his career, and I think he's always kind of realized that, when he played with the Patriots, he always took pay cuts, and now he's applying that same rhetoric here with Tampa Bay. And I think this is going to help out their team, stay together, continue their success off of their Super Bowl run last season. Odell and the Bucs would be absolutely insane if they kept all of their weapons. Last season they had Robert Gronkowski, OJ Howard, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Cameron Brate. It goes on and on with the weapons that they have. And if they brought in Odell Beckham Jr., one of the premier receivers in the league, many still see him as a top 10 receiver. Some people even put him in the top 5, depending on who is, making the list. If you add Odell Beckham Jr. to that offense, I don't think anybody's going to stop it, no matter how good your defense is. And we kind of saw that towards the end of the last season with the Bucs. Nobody was stopping that offense once they kind of gelled together and got things going. And if you added another top receiver into that offense, that would be absolutely ridiculous. In my mind, the only way they're going to get Odell Beckham is if they get rid of Chris Godwin. They can't afford both those guys, so if they let Chris Godwin walk and then they can make a trade for Odell Beckham, that would be a way more realistic scenario where they could bring in another top 10 receiver and let a really good one that has potential to be a top 10 receiver go. And I think if these rumors are, actually truthful, I think that's going to be the route that they take. I think most people will argue that Odell Beckham is better than Chris Godwin. Godwin is younger and most likely going to be cheaper, and they've both kind of dealt with injuries these past couple of seasons, so it's really just depends on the preference of the type of receiver that you want. Odell is a really electric receiver. He's going to, make a lot of plays in space. Chris Godwin's more of a route running type receiver that's going to get open off of, his crisp routes. And so if the Bucs want Odell Beckham, they're going to have to play this just right for it, to all work out. But of course, for that to even happen, the Browns are going to have to be willing to trade their star wide receiver. A lot of NFL fans believe that the Browns, may potentially be better without Odell Beckham on the field. They've seen Baker Mayfield light it up when Odell, as soon as he left the field due to injury or didn't play 1 week. Whenever Odell Beckham Jr. wasn't on the field, Baker played lights out, and once Odell stepped onto the field, he felt the need to force the ball to him, and that caused him issues within the offense, and it made Baker's, completion percentage, passer rating, all of his statistics, go down. So that's raised the question in the NFL, a lot of people have covered it. Is Baker Mayfield feel better without, you know, a top receiver. And I know it's kind of a silly thing to say, but it also, you know, really makes you do think, you know, maybe if he doesn't have somebody to force the ball to throw it up, maybe he will actually turn into a better quarterback. And that's a fair question. I think we saw that with, you know, Matthew Stafford and, you know, Megatron in Detroit. We always felt the need to throw the ball up to him because he's such a great premier receiver that sometimes it got him into a bad situation, you know, throwing into double, triple coverage when he should be spreading the ball to other places. And I think that has something to do with, you know, Baker Mayfield and Odell in, you know, in Cleveland. I think Baker recognizes his talent and, you know, tries a little too hard sometimes to give him the ball. That's never a great way for success. You definitely want to get the ball into the hands of your best players, but when you're constantly thinking in the back of your head, like, you know, I need to throw it to this guy, I need to get to this guy, it's definitely going to cause some, you know, problems within the offense and make you prone to mistakes if you're only always, you know, locked in on one player, you know, during a play. So if Odell returns to the Browns, we'll see if, you know, Baker gets better with that because he played tremendous this past year. You know, maybe he's picked up and matured as a quarterback to go through all of his reads, all of his progressions, and not lock in on one receiver. And if he can do that, there's no question that Odell will return to being a great receiver. And the offense will be able to run smoothly with adding in a top 10 receiver back into their offense. Odell is slated to make $14.5 million this year. I think a fair trade for the Bucs and the Browns is if the Bucs signed Chris Godwin to a long-term deal, or they franchise tagged him, you know, put a second-round pick in there and then traded him for Odell Beckham. I think that would be a fair, you know, trade for both sides. So essentially, you know, the Buccaneers weren't going to keep Godwin anyway, so they're keeping a player, shipping him off to Cleveland, and then, you know, basically trading a second-round pick for Odell. Odell coming off of an ACL injury, I don't think he's going to command a first-round pick anymore. I think that's, you know, a couple years ago, like when the Browns traded for him, that was his peak in value. I don't think he's going to be able to reach that ever again as he's approaching, you know, the 30s. But I think for the Bucs, the smartest thing to do would be sign Chris Godwin to a long-term deal that the Browns, you know, sign off on, or franchise tag Godwin, and then ship him in a second-round pick to the Browns and see if they will take that trade for Odell. You know, if they got the money right and the Bucs created enough cap space with Brady's restructure and they, you know, limited who they signed and brought back for next season, I think they would have enough cap and they could definitely make this work if the Browns were in on, you know, a second-round pick in exchange for, you know, their player. Personally, I would love to see Brady and Odell team up. I think he would bring the best out of Odell. You know, we've seen some really great catches, great moments, great plays, and, you know, even some great numbers and seasons from Odell, but I don't think we've seen, you know, the heights that he can reach. I think this would be like a remake of Randy Moss and Tom Brady. Of course, Odell Beckham Jr. is not in the same realm as Randy Moss, but he's a very talented player, very talented receiver, and I think Brady would definitely maximize everything that he can do and push the limits that he can go. And I think we would see a huge season for Odell if he ever got traded and got to play with Tom Brady. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for the video. Let me know what you guys think of a Tom Brady and Odell Beckham Jr. duo in the comment section down below, and let me know what you think it would take to get that trade done. So I think it would take Godwin and probably a second-round pick, or maybe just 2 seconds, something like that, to get Odell from the Browns. But let me know what you guys think. Like the video if you guys did enjoy. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. And I'll see you guys next time. I'm out.